This episode of The Unstarving Musician is powered by liner notes. Learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry professionals I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician on topics such as marketing, songwriting, touring, sync licensing, and much more. Sign up for liner notes at unstarvingmusician.com. It's an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems garnered from the many conversations featured on The Unstarving Musician. You'll also be privy to the latest podcast episodes and liner notes subscriber exclusives. Sign up at unstarvingmusician.com. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. This is The Unstarving Musician. I'm Rabonzo. This is my podcast. It features conversations with independent music artists and industry professionals, with occasional special topic episodes with yours truly, all intended to help independent music artists better understand the marketing business and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love, make music. Hey, thanks for joining me, seriously. I love knowing that you're listening to me now here on my podcast. Hey, The Unstarving Musician needs your support, and you can support The Unstarving Musician in many ways. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can tell a friend about the podcast. That's always amazing. Or you can visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor or the show notes for this episode to learn about the many ways of offering your support. We appreciate it. Before we get into my guests today, who are Ryan Miller and Jay Lifton, film scoring duo that they are, I wanted to remind you about a highly recommended podcast, another one that I'm a big fan of, and you should check out if you're a gigging musician. It's called the Gigging Musician Podcast. Host Jared Judge says that playing music for live audiences is one of the most rewarding things on the planet, and he's right. On his podcast, Jared dissects everything that goes into being successful as a gigging musician. You can hear it at giggingmusicianpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. So check it out. Also, I wanted to let you know that I created another drums and loops video. This one's more like a drum and loops because I'm using a hand drum. You can find it for a limited time on the Unstarving Musician YouTube channel. I'll be moving it over to my artist YouTube channel for Rabonzo. That's me. You knew that. This one, like I said, is with a djembe rather than my drum kit. As with my last drums and loops video, I'm using the TZ Stellar X2 large diaphragm cardioid condenser XLR mic, which was sent to me by TZ Audios for a review. I've been having fun with it. It's a great mic. So yeah, check it out on the Unstarving Musician YouTube channel. I will put a link in the show notes for you. I hope you enjoy it. So yes, my guests are the film scoring duo, as I'm calling them today, Ryan Miller and Jay Lifton. Ryan is a founding member and the lead singer of Guster. That's a band that my wife and I used to listen to a lot. One of their albums in particular, Lost and Gone Forever, my wife's favorite Guster album. Yeah, Guster recently celebrated their 31st consecutive year of touring and recording. He has scored over 15 feature films and has worked with directors Colin Trevorrow, man, I hope I said that one right. Let's try another one. Jordan Vogt-Roberts, Lake Bell, and Zoe Lister-Jones. And composer Jay Lifton, who's on the podcast with us also, who recently wrapped up on RABBLE ROUSERS, a documentary about the forces behind New York City's regentrification and urban displacement. So his business partner and friend, Jay Lifton, is a Brooklyn-based composer who has worked with Alicia Silverstone, Kirsten Smith, Sean Baker, Paul Feig, hope I said your name right, and Errol Morris, hope I said your name right, among others. Yeah, so he did that documentary I mentioned, RABBLE ROUSERS, and he somewhat recently scored an episode of This American Life. I need to get a link for that one. I'm not sure I have one for you guys, but I will try to find it. You can probably find it on jlifton.com. Yeah, on jlifton.com, which will be in the show notes for sure. And you can see what these two guys are doing together. They both have great resumes for their work in film scoring. So together they teamed up to do a somewhat recent project with Reese Witherspoon, a film called, or I should say, a Reese Witherspoon film, something from Tiffany's. I didn't ask him. I'm not sure they ever got to meet or hang with Reese. I would guess maybe not, but I don't know. Maybe they did. So it premiered this past holiday season on Prime Video, that film, something from Tiffany's. The film follows the story of a woman as her life gets upended when an engagement ring that was for someone else leads her to the person she's most meant to be with. The film stars Zoe Deutsch, Kendrick Sampson, Ray Nicholson, and Shay Mitchell. I watched the trailer and was struck by how beautiful it looked. Then, of course, I noticed the music that these guys did for it. It looks and sounds like Ryan and Jay did an amazing job scoring the film. Ryan was also born in Lubbock, Texas, so I felt kind of connected with him. I believe he tells me that he has connections in Fort Worth, my hometown, or where I was born. So we talk about that latest film with Reese Witherspoon, or the latest Reese Witherspoon film. I keep making it sound like they, were on the film on the set with her as she's directing or producing or whatever she was doing. We also talk about how they got their start in film, their complementary skill sets, the value of film festivals, advice to musicians interested in scoring films, and a whole bunch more. Film scoring is not something I know a lot about, so it was fun speaking with Ryan Miller and Jay Lifton. I've interviewed at least one other music artist who's done some film scoring, and that artist is Liz Chirelli. She's lovely, super interesting, and you'll find links in the show notes for her episodes if you're interested in hearing her perspective. Now, I don't normally interview more than one person at a time, and I will not do it again, or at least not until Mick and Keith or Flea and Chad Smith come on the show. But we had some audio issues, partly because I'm not really set up for doing more than one person at a time. That just makes things more complex if everything's not going perfectly, which often it doesn't. Anyway, I hope it won't be a distraction for you, my esteemed listener. I did my best to make it sound good for you. In fact, this was the most challenging episode I've ever edited. I think you'll enjoy it. I'm just venting about all the work. And at myself for not putting my foot down. I only interview one guest per episode moving forward. Unless, like I said, Mick and Keith, Flea, Chad. All right. Enjoy my conversation with Ryan Miller and Jay Lifton.
I'm in Brooklyn, and a little hoarse. I just got over a cold.
Here's Ryan. Let's let him on. Hey, Ryan. How's it going?
Oh, I was in a waiting room, a lobby. Now I'm in the actual room.
Now you're in, yeah.
I was there like 10 minutes ago. I'm like, don't tell me to get on. I've been on since 11:21. Rose, I got my libsyn all dialed.
That's funny. We were just talking about where we're from. Ryan, I saw that you are from Lubbock, Texas originally. Do you ever spend time in Texas at all? Do you got family there?
Oops, sorry. I do have some family there. My mom grew up there, and so I have a lot of relatives still there, but my parents don't live there anymore. But yeah, I got cousins everywhere down there.
Nice. I'm from Fort Worth, so it caught my eye. We're not that close together, but
Well, I mean, I was born in Lubbock, but I was raised in Dallas, so that's closer.
So were you doing the whole? It's so funny. After all these years, is it Guster or Guster? Were you doing that in Dallas?
Guster. No. I went to high school in Dallas, graduated, and went to college in Boston with Jay. Actually, we went to college together, not the same year. And then we started the band at the college. Yeah.
Oh wow! Did you and Jay ever play in a band together? Or
no? It's sort of funny. We had a lot of mutual friends and kind of we're in similar circles, but we really didn't interact much in college. I was kind of like in the academic music track and playing in like jazz bands and things like that. And Guster was like already, in my mind, they were like already a successful band that existed when I got to Tufts. Like they were already playing major venues in Boston at that point.
Wow.
Wait, you're only a year younger than me though, right, Jay?
Yeah, but I transferred into Tufts. So I showed up as a sophomore and you guys had already been kind of going for
that's
2
true.
years.
Yeah, by by junior year. But also because you were in the singing group with another dude in my band. That's why.
Right. Yeah. Adam and I were friends.
A very well respected collegiate a cappella group. So don't be careful. You know what I mean? I was not a member of that band. I did audition. I didn't get in.
I would have liked to have heard that.
I never knew that.
I think I auditioned with a Howard Jones song. No One Is to Blame. You know that song?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like a great melody. You can look at the menu. You know what I mean? I should put that on my playlist. I'm going to do that.
You should.
Anyway, is this good? Did we do a good job? Are we all done?
Yeah, man. I really appreciate you guys' time. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Great. Thanks. Glad we got this together.
So let's get this out of the way. I want to ask about something from Tiffany's. I have only seen the trailer, and I was first struck by how beautiful it looks. And then, of course, I noticed the music. Tell me about the experience and how it came about. And either of you, since I'm not used to doing, I have done a couple of these. I'm not used to doing more than one person at a time. I'm just going to let you guys fight over mic time.
Yeah, Rye, you should take this.
We're pretty good partners at this point. I'll start, and then you can. I know how to hand it off to you. So this movie was directed by Daryl Ween, who is an old friend of mine from New York, and we have worked together. We worked together on a movie that he co-directed with his partner at the time called How It Ends. And, it was a great experience working with Zoe and Daryl. And it's kind of one of those situations where, you hope that you can grow with a director. I mean, as a composer, I think part of a lot of people's key to success is finding young filmmakers. And as they kind of get bigger, that you go along with them. And there's plenty of examples. And so I was really stoked about the work that we did on How It Ends. And then he got this it was a much, much bigger movie. I mean, How It Ends was like, I think they scrapped it together for like $100,000. And this was a $25 million movie. And even though I had done a bunch of studio films, it was kind of a harder sell. The people involved, Hello Sunshine were a female fronted company, and they were pushing for a lot of diversity, and it was Daryl had kind of tried to get me on the gig, and it just didn't seem like it was going to work for a few reasons. So that was fine. And it ended up not working out with the composer that they hired. So we came in late, and as you were saying, like the trailer is very, it looks really beautiful. They didn't want this to feel indie at all. They wanted this to feel like a big Hollywood movie. They wanted it to look good. They wanted it to sound good. They got great performers and great performances. So then when Daryl was like, hey, I think I might be able to get you on this, but we need it to sound amazing. I was like, and we don't have a lot of time. I was like, okay, I got a guy. And Jay and I had worked together once before on a documentary many years ago. And I just really loved the process. It wasn't my first time working with a co-composer, but I really like collaboration, especially Jay has a skill set that's very, very different than mine in a lot of ways. He's a technical, he's been in the world of doing commercials and scoring to picture ever since we graduated. And that's not something I have ever done. So I also knew he had a lot of chops when it came to arranging and this sort of big Hollywood string stuff. I knew that he could help me mock this up really quickly. And so I called him and I was like, hey, do you want to jump in on this really quick? All right, Jay, that was too long. Yeah, I'm going to do better with not being so long after that, but I just needed to get that out of my system. All right, Jay, you too.
Yeah, so this was something I remember Ryan had called me like in the spring that it might happen, and then it was off, and then it was on again. And I was sort of like, this seems really fun. And the deadline was so tight. It's like, well, this will just be like, we'll race for a month or two, and it'll be like a really fun project. And it started as, like I was sort of arranging support. Maybe I would do some, just sort of like be in the shadows with whatever help. And then it kind of turned into more of a co-compose. And, Both of us are parents, and in terms of quality of life, it was really nice that we could both be working, or if somebody needed to go to a family event or, Ryan goes on tour, someone could always be moving ahead on the project. And honestly, composing's very solitary, and it's nice to like have a little morning meeting and kind of discuss what you're going to do during the day. And I find it really, really fun. And I came out of a background where I was working at a lot of music companies with many people for a long time and got really used to that. I like that kind of camaraderie on a job very much.
Nice. And to give me some perspective, when Ryan said that, or when you both said the time was a compressed ordeal brought in last minute, what does that look like in terms of time? How much time did you have, and what would it have normally been?
Well, I mean, I've done film scores in 3 weeks that can kind of turn over really quickly. I don't remember exactly. I feel like it was less than a month, right, Jay?
Once we sort of got the go ahead after doing some mock-ups and kind of like the get the gig cues, I feel like it was maybe 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks.
And I think for one person, it didn't end up. I don't remember like not sleeping for that month. I think it was a very reasonable schedule, and it was another reason why. I mean, just not to give away the ending, but after we did Tiffany's, I called Jay and I was like, "Hey, do you just want to do this from now on? Like, we're working on a film right now that actually we both kind of got ourselves the gig." It was funny. We had a mutual connection, but now we've just kind of formed this partnership moving forward where I mean, I haven't checked in with you recently, Jay, but I feel like this one's going good too, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So I guess to go back to your question, I mean, 5 weeks split between two people actually wasn't a crazy pace, but with film scoring, as you know, there's like a lot of layers. So you've got to sell it to the director. We also had to sell it to the studio, and they also had to sell it to Amazon. So there were kind of three heads in the room, and certain things would be like, well, these two people like it, but this one doesn't. And you would, part of it is like, well, you guys got to figure it out and then come back to us. So this was the first time that I think I've worked where there were that many layers and everybody kind of got a vote, and that just can add enormous amount of time.
Sure. And thank you for the credit in saying, as I know, film score is actually extremely foreign to me in terms of what really goes on. So this is going to be a fun education for me. But I know that, one thing I've garnered in...
Well, we're happy to take you along the way, although I don't think that I've had a typical film scoring career at all. So I can't speak for everybody.
Yeah, sure. The one thing I've gathered from like 250 episodes of the podcast is that I've run into musicians who have dabbled in it, and I can tell, even though we don't even talk about it sometimes, that there are many musicians who would jump at the chance to do it. So for me, it was interesting to talk to you guys, not just because of your body of work, but also just so other musicians and would-be film score people, talent, can just kind of hear how it's been for you guys. So, but anyway, yes, thanks for the credit, as if I know anything about this.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, it's funny. Last night I got a call from a friend of an old friend of mine who's a huge manager, like some of the biggest like A-list names, and he's like, I have a band and they're going on hiatus for a minute, and one of the guys wants to get into film scoring. Do you want to talk to him? And I was like, absolutely, because like I was like, look, I've been taking those karma pellets out of the jar for the last 15 years, and I'm happy to put one back in. So, it's funny we're having this conversation, because I was even thinking about it this morning. I'm like, oh, like what kind of unsolicited advice would I give to someone that's in a very successful band that is now trying to move into this world? So I was already kind of thinking about that stuff.
Yeah, good. I'd like to really hear the answer from both of you, but Ryan, you first. I want to know what, looking back on your journey into film scoring, how you ended up doing the work that you're enjoying so much now.
It's actually there was kind of a lightning bolt moment. My best friend at the time and I had written a screenplay as a goof in 2009, and he was able to find some money and make it. And then he says like, oh, I want you to music supervise it. So I was like, okay, I can pick music. And then as I was starting to do it, he was like, you should score the movie. You should write music for the movie. And I was like, I don't really know how to do that. I'm not an engineer. I don't care. I don't know what compression is. I don't know how to use EQ. Like we had already at that point, we had made probably 3 or 4 records with some of the biggest studios in the world. I never cared about engineering. In fact, I think I remember visiting you, Jay, before this, because you were working at, what was it? Where were you first working?
JSM?
Yes. And I remember like, oh, maybe I could do commercials. And I remember seeing Jay, and everyone was so good, and they all had all this gear, and they knew what they were doing. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to do any of this.
Yeah, you and Adam came in one day.
Yeah. And I was so impressed with like you guys, because you're like, oh, if you want hip hop, I got a hip hop guy over there, and you drum set up, and everybody was such a crack engineer, and you were playing us stuff that you did, and I didn't even know how to like record anything on Pro Tools. So I had written that off as a possibility, but I basically, during this film that I wrote, I guess the stakes were so low, I pressed record on Pro Tools and started playing with it. And really, this is true. I was sitting in my living room in Brooklyn at the dining room table, and there was a scene playing, and I played some music, and then I played a different piece. I wrote something and I played a different piece of music, and the entire scene changed. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. Like music is cool. Music like changes things. And I kind of let my brain spin out. I was like, what if I wanted to do this? Like movies are cool, and I like the world. Like I like being around creative people, and and I just was like, I think I just decided, like in a 30-second thought experiment, I was like, maybe I want to do this. And it's also like, I was like just turning 30s, and I had a kid, and I had a wife, and I didn't want to be on the road 9 months a year. So I think that's really where I know that's exactly where it started. I was like, well, I want to figure out how to do this, because this could be a great thing for me to do. That it was the first thing I ever did that wasn't the band. It was my first ever leap. And then that it is where I started. And then I could tell you more, but that's kind of where it came from me. And then I went back into commercials, but Jay had an opposite experience.
Yeah. Jay, tell me about yours.
I was kind of always, I grew up outside New York on Long Island. My mother was actually a songwriter, and she would go to this local studio, and basically I would tag along all the time. So I kind of had a sense there's some kind of job, like session musicians would come in, and sometimes people from Manhattan would come out. And so it was like, I could see that this all existed in some form, but I kind of was always interested in scoring something. And I knew that in New York, when I finished grad school, I came back to New York, and I knew that these music companies existed in New York, lots of them. And they were mostly doing commercial work, which was interesting to me, mostly because of the fast turnaround. And I ended up, it was just very random. I made some calls and interned at one, and then that turned into like a 6-year stint, then went off with another one that did more kind of a variety of work. So I got to the point where I was doing like 50% spots and then 50% film, TV, other stuff. But they would sometimes bring us the work, and then you'd meet ad people who ended up getting into music supervision. And that's actually kind of our core mutual contact base for me and Ryan. We sort of knew all the same music supervisors who came out of advertising. But yeah, I was kind of always into that. I knew that I was not someone who could write real songs and be in a band. So I was mostly interested always in music for picture or producing stuff, kind of like behind the scenes stuff. And actually, I think, Ryan, didn't we meet up on that job at some point?
Which one?
The 2008 or 2009 one? What did we do? We made like this karaoke track for a bar scene of like some 80s, like an 80s medley.
Whoa, right. Yeah, that's I think we did do it. Was was it We Built This City on Rock and Roll?
Yeah, it might have been. It was that, and it went into some other 80s classic.
Yeah,
but I think that was like our first
I
collab.
forgot that entirely. That was our first collab.
That was the first one.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Wow, and when was that?
2009, I think.
Yeah, it was a real one-off sort of thing. And then I guess, then a few years later, you called me on some things. We would be in contact over the years because I would, through, again, like mutual friends, or I'd see him at a show. And we were both living in New York for a while.
But my like pithy anecdote of this is that you basically embarked on a career of being a commercial guy and wanted to get into movies, and that I was like a movie guy that wanted to get into commercials. I think that's not entirely true, but I do remember us talking a little bit about the films that I was doing, and you were kind of behind me in terms of like when you started doing them. But I was very envious of your commercial career at that point, because you were making a living just like spitting out IBM demos and stuff, which I actually think I really like doing as well, because it was like a super fun assignment.
Yeah.
Nice. I was reading about a lot of that commercial work that you had done, Jay, and it is interesting, Ryan, that you have interest and fascination in it as well. You both have alluded to something I wanted to ask you about, which are your complementary skill sets, and I gather that some of it's audio, some of it's commercial, probably some of it's sort of being immersed in the pop world. But can you talk a little bit about that and maybe give listeners an idea of some of the things they might look for or take notice of if they were to ever enter into a collaboration like the one that you guys have?
Well, Jay's like a real music student. I mean, Jay you have a dual degree, right?
Sort of, no, New England Conservatory.
Yeah.
I didn't do the dual degree. I did it in sequence, but
that's right.
I was too lazy for the dual degree. That's an intense lifestyle.
But like Jay knows what like a dominant seventh chord is, and also like knows what the good pizzicato viola sound is. And on Tiffany's, there was a moment, where there's like a walk and talk with the couple, one of the couples in the film. And Daryl was like, I just want some like Italian romance music, and I was like, okay, God, I got to go figure out what that means. And Jay's like, oh, hold on. And then it was like, I can do this. And then the next morning he wrote this beautiful, I think it's still one of the most beautiful, like, pieces of music I'm even associated with, even though I didn't do anything, this melody. And I'm like, oh, Jay knows how to do that. Like, and the film that we're working on right now, that's directed by Pamela Adlon, like a lot of it was just jazz stuff. And I just don't have any jazz chops at all. So I'm sort of like, okay, I think this is going to be a more jazzy thing. And Jay can just poop it out like, he's blowing bubbles or something. And so I mean, I feel like Jay probably there's a lot that Jay brings to it, like a lot, and is totally capable of doing this on his own. I mean,
you shouldn't sell yourself short though, because you're
no, I mean, it's funny. Like now that we're like 2 or 3 or 4 into these now, I realize that the value that I have as well. And I feel like I'm holding my weight in a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot about being a composer that's a lot about communication and making people feel comfortable and kind of reading the tea leaves when they say what they want, but they're not musicians. So kind of knowing what that is. I mean, Jake knows how to do that too from his decades of client work.
You kind of, though, you sort of have a really good intuition with that kind of stuff. I definitely, like when we're in calls, I definitely am asking myself, like, am I interpreting this right? Is somebody mad at me and I don't know? I think somebody's
there is some of that. And like, not that you don't have people skills, but it is something that also that I feel like I do really well. Like these can be very tense conversations. I've been in a lot of this whole thing, the dynamic, it really turns on the relationship and the communication skills. And so again, like just making sure that people feel comfortable and kind of calling things out and not letting anything lie too long. Like that's just the confidence I have having done 15 features and being a creative person. And also just like, not to undersell that I stand in front of thousands of people every night, multiple weeks a year and talking to a microphone. So there's a little bit of maybe fearlessness or ego that's involved in this that I think can be very helpful. And also like I'm a big melody guy and I like, I like so I mean, I'm okay too, but there is something that in between the two of us, I think that's really good and allows us to kind of make. It's really. I'll stop talking here in a second, but I remember after doing the Tiffany's thing, feeling like, oh, now I feel like my ceiling just got higher. Like I can do more stuff that I wasn't able to do before.
Oh yeah. No, likewise. For me, it was like I had no way into a gig like that at that time. And sort of your contacts and like ability to get into a room was really key in that.
Well, it's not exactly the answer I anticipated, but it makes perfect sense that it goes beyond, songwriting and engineering skill sets and those things that are more technical, but the relationships and reading the room, so to speak.
Yeah, and I do think and the last thing is like, because Jay is so good, and sometimes this about yourself, Jay, like, did I go too far here? Like if you go into Tiffany's, you can almost like, and I think this will probably be true on this film as well, you can kind of tell the ones that Jay spearheaded versus the ones that I have, but I don't think they're necessarily any less effective. I kind of tend to stay in a little less, not mellifluous, but like a little bit, my vocabulary is a little more limited in some ways, but I can also use that to my advantage. Like I've had a really nice career without Jay, so I'm not saying I'm a bad composer, but I do appreciate that I'm learning a lot from that and I'm sort of challenged, but I also can know like when to keep things, when I can play, okay, well, I'm just going to do a 1-4-5 with a nice melody. And not to say you wouldn't do that, Jay, but I don't know that you would. I think that's what I'm here for.
Nice. And what is the name of the film that you're currently working on then?
We don't
know.
It's called Untitled Pregnancy Project. It's written and starring Alana Glazer from Broad City and directed by Pamela Adlon. So they still don't have a title for it, and we're not going to any festivals yet, so I think they don't have the pressure to title it.
Unless that is the title.
We should ask them. I know we should ask them what it's called.
Yeah, we might want to know that for future interviews.
That's funny. Speaking of festivals, aside of going there to, because you have a work, I would imagine, again, it's a world I haven't personally been in a lot, but I would imagine there are a lot of opportunities there for exposure, in the beginnings of marketing of the film. Are there other things about the film festivals that you guys really enjoy or see as highly beneficial to the work that you do, and maybe the first times that you went to, how they might have been beneficial? I mean, in terms of contacts or relationship schmoozing, whatever, or anything else.
Yeah, we probably have very different experiences, especially because Ryan, I think, has been there with Guster as well as a composer. I know for me, I go and just with the attitude that I'm going to have a lot of fun. The first Sundance I did many years ago now, we kind of equally split it between watching movies and going to events. It's really fun. You run into lots of people there. So I think it is a great, especially in the pre-pandemic times, it was a great time to kind of reunite with a lot of people you knew and then decide, let's definitely get coffee back in New York. Or it was a great vehicle for that. It depends. As I've gotten older, I've been a little more kind of introverted and not as social as some of them. But I think if you have a film in one, it's a really, you should definitely go. I tell people if they have 3 cues in a movie, if they're a young composer and they can figure it out financially, they should go, because you do end up meeting tons of people on the film you did that are making other films. So I think it's really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, my first film that I ever really did, not the one that I wrote, was a movie called Safety Not Guaranteed, and it kind of won Sundance that year. Like, it won the Audience Award. The director, Colin Trevorrow, his next movie was Jurassic World. Like, he was just one of those guys that got plucked. And the next year I went and I had 2 films at Sundance. One of them was called Kings of Summer, and that guy, Jordan Vogt-Roberts, the director, he had a similar arc. His next movie was King Kong Skull Island. And this is just an aside, like, you want to find a young filmmaker that grows, but not that fast, because I was not going to do Jurassic World or the new King Kong movie. So I think I had 5 films in 5 years that I was doing this, all at Sundance. And I don't know. I mean, part of this is just a lifestyle thing. Like, I just love being around creative people. I love being in the flow of, like, let's get drunk on the side of the mountain at 2 a.m. with this really cool filmmaker. And yeah, those hangs, what ends up happening, and why this is a really hard job to do from Vermont, and was really hard after I moved from New York, was just inevitably a lot of filmmakers just want to work with their friends. And that's how we got the gig with Daryl. Daryl's my friend, and he fought for us, and we got the gig, and we did a great job, and everybody's happy. But those relationships really are the basis of, like, probably 90% of how people generate work, especially for the first couple chapters of their career before they're really, really established. So being in flow socially, in a party atmosphere, and not kind of these, like, oh, let's go take a general meeting and sit in the office for 15 minutes, but actually, like, stumbling down Main Street in Park City, that it's kind of how it works. It's like kind of how you get gigs and how you build these relationships. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's probably not that dissimilar from kind of in some ways, like going to South by and going to music festivals, or just playing Bonnaroo or something, because you're hanging out backstage and it's like, oh, Kurt Weill's over there, he likes your band, you guys should make something together. It's the same stuff.
Yeah, I would imagine. I think, Ryan, you've mentioned it a couple of times, but the idea of identifying and working with the young filmmaker, which I assume is versus, someone who's been around for a long time and is super established. Can you talk a little bit about the importance, and both of you, whatever input you have on it, the importance of that in your partnership, in your career, and why it's worked out to be a good strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, in terms of just finding collaborators that you can start to speak a language with, because once a lot of the work that we're doing as composers is we're craftsmen, right? It's not our vision. And I kind of always say this at the beginning of every process. I'm like, look, I'm just here to get what's in your head out into the film. And if you don't like it, then I'm not doing my job. So you're really kind of a cipher in a lot of ways. So if you can get through a film and everybody's happy, then you've already established some kind of shortcuts, and you've established a language and a method of communication that you can parse what they say when they're like, it's just too soft. And you know what that means. Or like with Daryl, it took me, like, it's like, oh, he hates vibraphones, you know what I mean? Or he hates tremolo on guitar. And you don't know that until you've turned in a cue with tremolo on guitar 5 times and he rejects it. And you're like, oh, I just have to turn this off, and now he likes it. So I think some of that is just kind of, and again, this is why a lot of filmmakers in Hollywood they'll work with the same DP 10 times in a row. They'll work with the same sound people. They'll work, with the same editors, and they because the shorthand develops that really helps expedite the process and shortens the journey from thought to execution. So I think that's a really big part of trying to find kind of an early filmmaker. And also mostly just because it can get you in the door if you're not, Hans Zimmer or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
How about from your perspective, Jay?
Yeah, I agree. You definitely, the main thing is just work. You find people to pair up with and do the best job you can. I see a lot of, and I maybe in the very beginning sometimes had this attitude that if the film, you just kind of have to do the best you can with what opportunities you have early on, and just write the best possible score you can. And it sounds really obvious, but there's definitely, I've been in situations with kind of composers who are starting out who are kind of either dragging their feet on a gig or kind of have a negative attitude about it because, they're not walking into like a large budget movie, but you have to start somewhere. And again, every project you do, I would guarantee 3 to 4 people on that crew are filmmakers independent of the director of that movie. And so there's opportunities to meet people on every project you do. And so you just have to get your stuff out there for people to hear. So if you keep waiting around for the perfect project, I think you do yourself a disservice, actually.
I would imagine. And so you both have a wide range of project types you've done since you've been doing this. Clearly the feature film or the film are fun to work on for you guys, but do you have similar fondness or less for documentaries? And we've talked about commercial work too. Like, do you see those coming in and out of your future in your partnership together, as well as doing the types of films that you've been working on as of late?
Jay, you're doing a commercial today, right?
Yeah, I'm yeah, we were doing IBM yesterday and today. It's I think, they're sort of a nice little project between films, or films move at a much slower pace usually. And it's something that you can kind of do in the middle. And at this point, I'm sort of a little more choosy in terms of commercials, of which I'm not sort of in the trenches every day with it in the same way that I used to be, but I do enjoy them. And they tend to be a project that, I get a lot of satisfaction from, there's a 2-week period and you can kind of make this thing and it's done and it goes to air. Stuff satisfies a more like long form desire to write that kind of music.
Sure. What do you guys think about music in video games? That was obviously a thing that's come up in the media a lot, and I've known of it for a while. I know a guy in San Jose, California, who has apparently been doing it for a long time, and I probably talked to someone else on the podcast that I'm forgetting. But what do you think of it, and do you guys ever see yourself dabbling in that world?
I would love to do that. I mean, that's I've seen some games that have fantastic scores. Red Dead Redemption was one that somebody played me, that it was super evocative score, both of the games. I don't know. Right. We never talked about that, right? I guess. I mean, I would be totally into that kind of thing.
I always just felt like it was really, really competitive. I've met with a few video game people over the years, like on like a general or something. And I think it's just like, it's a really hard nut to crack. But obviously it can be extremely cinematic. And I think the people that I know that have done it, it can be very lucrative too. And it's also just very consistent work. It's almost like it's almost like the commercial world mixing with the film world, because there's a huge volume of music that has to be produced, and you get paid really well because the games make a lot of money. Yeah, I would love to do it, but I don't even know how I would start.
Yeah, no,
it feels like feels like I would have to start from scratch again.
Yeah, it would be definitely like a approaching how to break into that. But yeah, I'm a junkie for new experiences with music, so that's sort of like, I want to try that.
Yeah, I would imagine it would be cool, and I'm sure that like with some of the things we've talked about, it's relationships and who you know. But I guess we don't see those composers, or haven't been in past years as prominent at, say, the film festivals, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think they have like the video game awards or something.
Yeah.
Although didn't somebody just won a Grammy for a video game?
Yes.
That's cool.
I'm blanking on her name. I maybe it was Natalie Holt, but maybe not. There's more crossover in it, and I think if you're doing, say, a series that somebody really likes, you could end up, making a lateral move into a related game. But again, it's like Ryan was saying, I think you get in that sort of circuit, and then you're just cranking it out.
Yeah, in a silo probably. The gal that won was Stephanie. I can't even say her name.
Economou. Yes. I should know that, because yes, she's also Greek. She did the score also for the Chair, which was a really good score. A lot of violin in that.
Jay, is it fair to say that breaking into the commercial world, not only being so different from maybe getting into the film scoring world, is it a longer game and maybe even in some regards a little harder?
Commercials?
Yeah.
I think film is because the film people tend to be looking for something they might not be able to put their finger on, but something kind of specific. And in commercials, you can really rely. I mean, you need to have an original voice, but you can rely if you can play a lot of positions, write in a lot of different styles, are quick, and have commercials are sort of like boot campy. You have to develop a lot of skills and work really quickly, and it's like doing like hit training or something for music. You go from one thing to the next. I think that's the main thing you need doing spots. I don't know. Honestly, I was kind of at this first place I was at, I was struggling for a while, and then there was a massive turnover, and suddenly I was off the bench. And if certain events hadn't happened, I don't know what would have transpired, honestly. A lot of it was just kind of right place, right time. I think with film, there's a lot of that too, and also just social finesse. And again, having something, like Ryan's written all these amazing songs over the past 20, 30 years. And I think that goes really far in attracting a filmmaker to say, I love this guy's music. If you're working on spots, it's very rare a filmmaker would be like, hey, I saw your ad when I was watching Matlock, and I want to hire you to do my feature. I don't know that has ever happened, but I mean, maybe.
Yeah, it really is it's a huge thing, and I can understand. I mean, this is even happening with film composers that are coming out of like great film, like out of school, like UCLA with great film composition. Like it kind of, it's not as easy. Like it's a lot. The weird hack is to be in a band that the director likes.
Yeah.
And this goes back forever. I mean,
I think
Danny
really
Elfman
I think it's just, and it's also, I think also, and this is part of like what I can do is like, I'm an artist. Like I'm not to say that people that do commercials aren't making art, but they're not usually. I mean, they're at the whims, but I've been an artist. I know what it's like to create something. I understand storytelling on a very deep level. So I think knowing that these directors know that they're sitting across the room, across the table or a screen from another artist is very compelling. And usually can help short circuit some of this, because it's like, I know what this feeling is right now. You're trying to say that in this moment, she's conflicted because she's really sad, but she also misses this person, and that there's a really deep art that needs to be pulled out of this. And that's not something you usually get from commercial work either. I mean, it tends to be more monochromatic in commercials because you're doing something for 30 or 60 seconds, and maybe you get a Nike ad that lasts 2:30, but you're doing a much different kind of storytelling as a film composer, and being an artist is a huge advantage, I think.
You're seeking to manipulate in commercials. The music is seeking a goal, I think, whereas in film, it may not be that. And again, somebody hearing your music is a really, I mean, without that, you're kind of just in your studio by yourself.
Yeah, right. I'm reminded of how true it is. Ryan, you mentioned, Jay, you mentioned the body of work that Ryan had and the appeal to certain directors. I don't know if it's the first time it came to my attention that that's so true, but it's one that sticks out in my mind when the actor-comedian Aisha Tyler did her indie film, the name of which I'm forgetting, but she really loved, I read, Silver Sun Pickups, the band, and so they did the music for her film, and it was out of that same type of love of some artist, and she was probably in proximity to them as well, which I imagine can can play into that. One thing I wish I would have asked at the top, because it may sound awkward now, and I'm not going to edit it to be at the top, but I'm always curious to know, and it may be of little value to my listeners, but I assume that you guys are I think it's a safe assumption, you're on a bit of a PR campaign. What is it that got you out to talk about, and I don't know if you do this regularly, but what is it that has you out right now doing the proverbial circuit to talk about your work? What is it that you were trying to get out there about your work specifically?
Jay, that's a good question for you.
I feel like I've spoken too much. I have after I did a film 2 years ago that called Sister of the Groom that Alicia Silverstone was in, and it was getting a lot of sort of press on the prior to release, as a lot of stuff that she does, and a friend of mine, Jamie, who's an editor, he suggested I call a publicist, and he said these guys can really roll this into something more than just stuff you might get incidentally. They can seek out interviews for you. So yeah, Andrew set this up at Impact, and they're great. They really are kind of working hard to find stuff like this to do. So yeah, we felt that it was. Oh boy!
I mean,
you got to edit this part out, please.
Yeah. Is the question, why are we interested in talking about this project? I guess the very cynical answer is that we want to keep doing work, and that there's some value in like showcasing the work. Because also, like, if you see the film, you're not gonna. I don't know. It depends, but there's not a lot of times when I watch a movie for the first time, I'm like, I love the music. Like, that's just in the hierarchy of storytelling. You're watching, you're listening, you're digesting a plot, you're watching things that are visual. I think it's like at least third on the hierarchy of what seeps in there. But I do think the music is really good and effective in the film. And so I think there's part of it was that I think what we're sort of hoping to establish, although I don't even know if there's a way to do this yet, it's just be like, hey, peel back the layer, and there's another layer of really good work that's in this movie that maybe you wouldn't notice the first time you watched it.
Yeah, and as Ryan, as you started speaking, or maybe at the tail end of my asking the question, I figured, well, certainly at least part of it is to keep the work, or to feed the workflow prospect machine part of, or the marketing part of what you do. So anyway, it's been a pleasure for me to speak to you guys. I don't know if you have a place online where people can find out about both of you at the same time, and maybe there's a couple of places, and Jay, I know you have a website, but where are the best couple of places that if people want to look a little more into things that we talked about, or the other work that you've done, or things that you work on in the future, where should we send them?
Jay, you have a site, yeah?
Yeah, I have it. You can go to my site is just jlifton.com, which I should update more than I do. I guess we could maybe get this on like the Tiffany's Facebook or Insta.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah. Oh, just for our personal stuff?
All of it. I mean, part of the question is self-serving, like, okay, where can I talk about it so that,
right, I got
that it gets talked about our conversation. But the other part is people who genuinely want to know. And I did see jlifton.com, which funny thing that happened when I did, I got IMDb links for both of you guys from your PR rep. And Jay, you happened to have your website link in your IMDb profile. And I was like, this is much nicer. but yeah, that was the reason for the question. And I think, the non-self-serving part, like I said, is people may want to know more, or just look up something that we talked about that we didn't talk as much about as they wish we would have.
I need to do this like a definitive place, but I mean, I run the Guster Twitter, so I spend some time there. There's a lot of my film scores, and some of Jay and my stuff might be up on our Spotify as well. If you want to listen to some film music, a lot of that stuff is up there.
It's all Spotify, any streaming service. We both have film stuff on that.
Yes, I was listening to I think when I search for you on either Spotify or Apple Music, and I just, well, let me just do it on Apple Music because that's what I'm doing these days. I get Guster, of course, for you, Ryan, and then Jay. I saw a lot of the work that you've done in film and otherwise. But no, that's great. And I think, Ryan, maybe, I don't know, a project for you or a project for you guys to put something consolidated together. But Jay, I think your site actually, from a glance, it looks like it's capturing what you guys are both doing. So I appreciate that. And Ryan, what is the Guster Twitter?
It's just at Guster. I got there.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that my wife Sammy loves the Lost and Gone Forever, that old CD from way back when.
I love that one.
Yeah, I'll take it.
That's
I'll take it. I like it too. We're good.
Yeah, it's good stuff. We've been casually like going through some of the catalog because we were sort of unaware of what the band had been up to, and then when I got the email and the opportunity to speak with you guys, we started looking. Well, again, hey, Ryan and Jay, it was a real pleasure. Good luck on the yet to be titled film and everything. Everything that you're working on. Yeah. This has been very educational for me, and I think it's going to be a great listen for the Unstarving Musician audience. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome. Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
If you do not yet have a website for your music, check out Bandzoogle. It was created to help musicians and bands build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle features amazing design options, a commission-free store to sell merch, music, tickets, and you get detailed fan data. And there's more. Try it free at bandzoogle.com. Use the promo code ROBONZO, that's ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. You've been listening to The Unstarving Musician with Robonzo. That's me. Please follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find links and mentions for this episode at unstarvingmusician.com. Thanks again for listening. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.